This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. It is episode number 85 on Tigers road opening day against the White Sox in Chi-Town. Doc, John Macaroon is along for the ride as usual. John, how's it going and how are you enjoying opening day for the Tigers on the road too?
It actually happened, Vito. The good thing is, like we talked about last week, they had this built-in day off like I asked you. Like, why do they have a day off on Tuesday? And as we're recording this podcast, the Tigers, we got them on in the background using the long ball. What do we say? Chicks dig the long ball. Home runs from Ian Kinsler, Nicholas Castellanos, and JaCoby Jones, baby. And they're winning right now as we're recording this. So by the time this podcast drops, they should be, barring a nightmare from the bullpen, they should be 1-0.
The Chicks dig the long ball. You are right, Doc. And you know what? Nicholas Castellanos. I saw on the broadcast they have his name listed as Nicholas now. Now, from my knowledge, he's been called Nick all throughout his career up until now. What the heck happened with that? Do you know?
Yeah, I think they're saying that that's his real name, and he wants to go by...
Oh, we know that, but he went by Nick for how long in his big league career?
Hey, maybe you want to change it up. Nicholas with the big bat. Maybe last year, because he got injured, you want to mix it up. These athletes are superstitious, but hey, if you just want to, if you're tired of going by, the abbreviated name, sometimes you just want to go by your full legal name, and maybe he wants to show respect to the family and go by Nicholas. What do you think about it?
Well, you know what? I don't really care. Honestly, it's just odd a little bit when a guy's been known as one name for his entire big league career, then changes it up all of a sudden. I don't entirely get that, but there is logic for him and probably his family for why that change was made, and it was. And guess what? I'm done talking about it because we have to talk about opening day and what has happened so far. Tigers winning, and unless a bullpen just dumpster fire happens, the Tigers will hold on to win opening day on the road against the White Sox, a team that looks pretty darn bad. Nobody's there at Guaranteed Rate Field now, as it's known, around the south side of Chicago. And I don't want to go on a diatribe about JaCoby Jones, who hit his first big league home run, a 3-run jack too, but it was on the shoe tops where he hit that ball. So him swinging at a pitch like that, it still strikes me as him lacking plate discipline. And I don't want to just go and talk negatively. Now I'm trying to find the negative aspect and like being a troll about JaCoby Jones here. But the ball that he hit was way below the strike zone at his shoe tops. And it wasn't a good pitch to hit with that being said. And then in the two at-bats that I saw him batting after that, pop-up/fly balls that he hit, not the line drive up the middle approach. He needs that up the middle approach, and it seems like he's lacking that plate discipline, which we all feared going into this season, which means he can't be a starting big league center fielder. Not every single day. And that's my concern, is his lack of plate discipline. And not that I saw him strike out in the at-bats that I watched him in today, but the pitches he was swinging at, I wasn't happy about that, Doc, even though he hit that 3-run jack. And once again, the first of his major league career.
You're a dick.
And I am, at least a little bit about JaCoby Jones. And probably I'm being too critical. I am right here, right, about JaCoby Jones after he did hit that 3-run home run. And the Tigers hit the heck out of the ball and hit the long ball with big-time success against Jose Quintana, the opening day starter for the White Sox. The first time he started opening day for the White Sox, as they had Chris Sale, doing that prior, before he was dealt to the Red Sox.
The Tigers have a history of pretty much knocking around Quintana. I think they've been able to do some damage, and it's good because the Tigers need to come out at the start of this season and have a lot of great success because many people are skeptical. And hey, the opening day was delayed. It was a kind of a spectacle. Many people are embarrassed by what the White Sox did with having all the players come out with hokey music in their cars and only to have 2 hours later the game to be called. So it seemed like they were just going through the motions. But in essence, hey, we waited from Monday to Tuesday, and I didn't really miss the Tigers. I was like, okay, maybe it was a good thing to delay the season by one extra day. And you had the excitement from the players that were just starting. There's a handful of players that have never experienced opening day before. And right now, when we talk about the Detroit Tigers, hey, if you're going to play a team like the White Sox, which many people across the board feel, and when they look at the White Sox, they feel like, sorry, Dom, they're going to lose 100 games this year. And most people were saying the starting pitcher on opening day, Quintana, is probably going to be a pitcher that's going to be traded and dealt should another club have an injury. So it's a team right now, the White Sox, that's in transition, and unfortunately, the Tigers have to go in there and, even though the expectation is that you're better than them, you got to go in there and dominate. And so far, hey, go out there and crush the White Sox. That's what you're supposed to do.
Supposed to. And domination has occurred so far. Only first game of the season, though. And JV, Justin Verlander, is on the mound. When you have Verlander on the mound, you know what? You should be winning each and every single game when that's the case. Even if you're facing Jose Quintana, who is an ace starting pitcher, an ace left-handed starting arm for the White Sox that might be dealt rather soon, or at least by the trade deadline, as it sounds like he is on his way out, as the White Sox are in a major rebuild mode right now after dealing Adam Eaton, their starting center fielder from last year, and their ace starting pitcher, Chris Sale, during the offseason. So I view Quintana as their biggest trading piece remaining, and not to invest too much of our time into the White Sox and what they need to do or what they will be doing this season. And as the trade deadline nears, which is far away right now as we speak, on the Tigers opening day after it was delayed by a day, and the intros, the White Sox having their intros be done yesterday when the game, you could tell the weather was miserable. The game wasn't going to happen. Why didn't they call the game earlier? And why did the intros happen on Monday? Doc, it didn't make any sense to me.
Well, you got fans just sitting there doing nothing, so you had an opportunity where the weather did clear. Unfortunately, with weather, we all know it's so unpredictable that it starts, it stops. You got to get the tarp off. You got to evaluate. They wanted to get the game in because there are fans, and whether it be one or a dozen or hundreds or thousands, if one fan that wanted to attend on Monday can't attend on Tuesday, now you're going to have an upset fan, and if you have an opportunity, the game was scheduled for 4 o'clock Eastern time, so you have a little bit of wiggle room, but the notion and what upset many people was you knew what the weather likely was going to be. You should have called it at like 10 a.m.
Yeah, the storm cell was huge, and you said on the scoreboard in the outfield, too, at some point on Monday, it wasn't good from the start. You could tell, like you said yourself, Doc, they could have called it early on in the morning on Monday and didn't do so. And it was a travesty, I think, for those fans that had to stay through all of that when the game could have been called prematurely, or at least when it should have been early on, well before that 4:10 p.m. start time on Monday for the Tigers White Sox opening day game that was delayed by a day. And Tigers have done well so far in the first game. We've seen success and the long ball being hit at a big-time rate, including wanted to note really quick, you said it already, but Ian Kinsler, too, went yard, but via that solo home run variety. It seems like he's always hitting the solo shots once again this season, as he did last year. The theme of his season last year, reoccurring, Doc. Way too early for my liking. And I know I'm like going and being so negative and critical of the Tigers when they're winning their first game of the season, but those little things stick out to me, and they could pick up. And if they do become a trend, the Tigers could be in a little bit of trouble.
What, are you going to change your nickname to Vito CNN?
I'm trying to be critical about everything.
Vito, the reason why, you're giving half the story. You want to know why? The majority of the home runs that Ian Kinsler hit were of the 1 or 2 run variety last year. Look who's batting 6th through 9th. The garbage, he's batting first, right? He's batting leadoff. So usually that means that he's going to be batting first at the top of the innings where nobody's on base. Or if he's in a situation where it's the bottom half, look who's batting in the 6th through 9th spot in this game versus the White Sox. You got Iglesias, you got McCann, you got Mikey Matuk. So that doesn't scream like a whole heck of a lot of base runners are going to be available for him when he gets actually up to bat. So part of it is him, obviously, with his timing, but the other part is he's got to be dependent upon who's on base in front of him, and the batting order for the Tigers in 2017 is going to be top-heavy 1 through 5. That's why I'm looking at it when I seen the lineup that was put out there. You missed J.D. Martinez. It's a good 3 through 5 lineup and very good 1 through 5 altogether, but 7, 8, 9, oh my God, it's pretty bad. Isn't
too appeasing whatsoever. 6 through 9, I would say.
So almost. Back off,
and with J.D. Martinez out. So yes, let me pull off the gas pedal a little bit and not be too critical of Ian Kinsler and his solo home run trend from last season and early on this season, only in the first game. And I am overreacting a little bit as I look on and see Jose Abreu, the first baseman of the Chicago White Sox, misplayed another ball, has done so twice now, had a ball right in his mitt for a double play opportunity, dropped the ball. It was a clear-cut ball in his glove, double play, it would have happened. He clear-cut dropped it. He is not very good defensively, and we've seen that already on display in the first game of the regular season for the Tigers. And as before the season got started, we saw an article on Tigers.com from Jason Beck, the Tigers MLB.com beat writer, talk about Brad Ausmus and the Tigers possibly entertaining in-season contract extension talks, which make me scared big time when that's already being talked about before even a game was played this season.
What?
Where'd you hear this kind of news? They're thinking about extending Brad Ausmus already?
They're I guess at least open to the idea of in-season contract extension talks with Bradley Ausmus, a man who I have talked about numerous times on this very podcast about not being good enough or fit for the managerial job of the Tigers. Now, by the way, do you know what year it is for Brad Ausmus, who got his contract option year picked up before?
Fourth year
on the job as Tiger skipper. And I think through the first three, we saw more than enough of Brad Ausmus and his mistakes. And now a fourth year of it, and they're talking about big time prematurely, about in-season contract extension talks. Please.
Now I want to get your opinion. Hold that thought. I want to get your opinion. One of the first moves made in the first game was Tyler Collins was pinch hitting for Justin Upton with a lead, 6-2. I know defensive
and this is Brad Ausmus not thinking about, what could happen in the game. If the bullpen blows a lead, then you want Upton in the game, right, in the late innings to bat. Collins, you don't want him coming up to bat instead of Justin Upton.
So early on, you think this is a move that you don't agree with?
Well, if they lose the game, I don't agree with it. They might lose the game, but they have a lead. That's what he's viewing right now as a reason for why he did put in Tyler Collins in place of Justin Upton as a defensive replacement, a defensive upgrade of sorts. But how big of an upgrade is Collins defensively, truly, over Justin Upton in left field? Not too big of an upgrade, in my opinion, Doc.
Well, you saw a couple misplays from Justin Upton early in the game. You know, he let one get over his head. It was probably a tough play anyway, but Justin Upton's defensive prowess isn't that great. It's serviceable at best, but do you think Tyler Collins is that much better? Wow, that's kind of an interesting question, but I guess that's what Brad Ausmus believes, is that he thinks that Collins can be utilized as a late inning guy to kind of handle the defensive responsibilities.
Ausmus is reaching for something, I think. He is. If he's going to end up replacing Collins, or replacing Upton for Collins on a consistent basis throughout the season as the season progresses, I will not like that whatsoever, and I think there will be an outcry from Tigers fans too, seeing that as a move that goes awry more often than not. And then especially with the Tigers bullpen, the state that it's in a state of flux, you could say. And now we can't totally, I guess, label the bullpen in a state of flux without the bullpen even being on display truly yet, only in the first game of the season as we talk right now, Doc. But what we expect from the pen in 2017 isn't much of productive results on a consistent basis. So with that being said, I think you want to keep your best hitters in the ball game to sustain the lead and to add on to the lead.
Many people are looking at the numbers. This is what many people are concerned about with Brad Ausmus. Nothing with, when you look at it, the lefty-righty splits would suggest that there's a better matchup going on with the White Sox pitcher right now. So Justin Upton had never faced Putnam. Tyler Collins faced him one time. So it's something that I guess he just decided to do. And again, when you look at it numbers-wise, and this is what we talk about in terms of why we're not confident in his abilities in terms of day-to-day managing. When you make a decision, you would say, okay, is it based on numbers? Is it based on your field, defensive replacement? All of it doesn't really check out with that first decision to pinch hit Tyler Collins for Justin Upton at any situation, especially because it wasn't a one-run game. You have a 4-run lead. Why are you pinch? This doesn't make really real sense. And then you'll probably get a bland answer when they ask him about it.
He won't give you anything of material. Not anything of really big time relevance or significance. And the thing is, for me, is that how much more fleet of foot is Tyler Collins and Justin Upton, even in left field? Not much more fleet of foot. It's not like Collins is a Mikey Matuk, a guy like that, or JaCoby Jones with an extreme amount of speed. And then Collins, once again, is he really that big of a defensive upgrade over J-Up in left field? I'm going to say no, and that's the reason why he put Collins in. I mean, if he does answer that question, gets that question, and probably will then answer it in some kind of shortened version, I think he'll say that he was a defensive replacement, because he can't be an offensive replacement. No way is Collins going into the ball game, really any ball game, and replacing Upton in the lineup and being an upgrade offensively. that being your reason for why you took out Upton and put in Collins.
Vito, is that a fair criticism from me early on in the season? Because it may go back to last year, but I feel like I'm being a little bit nitpicky with a 4-run lead. But when you look at it, when a manager makes decisions, you look at the numbers, lefty-righty splits, batting average. Upton only faced the pitcher from the White Sox one time. So Tyler Collins, I don't believe had faced him ever. So is that a fair question to look at? Because the overall theme would be, does Brad Ausmus make moves statistically that are in the best interest of the Detroit Tigers? So is that a fair question that I'm looking at, or am I just being a little bit too in-depth here on this first game day edition of the Tiger Talk podcast?
Well, I think we've both been a little bit nitpicky so far in this first regular season edition of Tiger Talk in the 2017 regular season for the Tigers, as I nitpicked the heck out of JaCoby Jones. Okay, I did already. And you now, with this decision to actually put in Collins for Justin Upton, who I think is just purely a defensive replacement, and that's why Collins was put in the place of J-Up. So I don't think it has anything to do with his splits against the relief pitcher for the White Sox being used right now, and about Collins being better against that reliever than Upton. I think it was just purely about the defense, about Ausmus viewing Collins as a defensive upgrade over J-Up. For the late innings in left field.
Now, Vito, when I hear the talk about rewarding somebody with a contract, that's a reward. Al Avila, if you looked, Major League Baseball kind of did a survey regarding what people thought of general managers, and what people thought about Al Avila was very low. They felt like the moves for Pelfrey and for Mark Lowe were devastating. You gave, in essence, $13.5 million away for people to do nothing. So the confidence level across the board in what Al Avila has done so far, not really upgrading the team, not really doing a whole heck of a lot, is pretty low. And then you go out and you say that you're hearing news that they might be able and might be considering upgrading or renewing the contract of Brad Ausmus. That indicates to me something that is probably pervasive in that organization, in that they have high regard for Brad Ausmus. They feel like this is the manager that can be someone that controls the clubhouse and manages the day-to-day operation. And when I look at that, I'm totally in disagreement. I say what you should do is wait it out, see at least what happens through the, at least the All-Star break. And so when I hear that from you, it does upset me. But then it also goes to them saying that we don't blame Brad Ausmus at all. We don't hold him accountable for the mistakes that he's made. And yes, it's a combination of not having enough talent, a terrible bullpen, but is that enough to override not making moves that are based in statistics, not being able to manage the game properly, not taking a team the first year that you had them and not getting past Baltimore when you were in essence dominated, and then having a couple of seasons back to back where you don't make the postseason? This is a win now league. And if you're going to take that approach, I think then the skepticism regarding Al Avila is just only going to rise. And not only will Brad Ausmus be gone, the next move will be a combo deal where you blow out Al Avila and Brad Ausmus. Da-ding, bada-bing, see you later.
And could we see Avila gone by midseason or the end of the season if he does indeed extend Ausmus? And what if he does extend Ausmus when they're far out of the race in the AL Central, and he still extends him for another year? As right now, it's year to year for Ausmus, which it should be okay. But after this year, you got to fire him. If they underachieve or just fall way under 500 and way out of the playoff race for at least a wild card spot, Ausmus has to go. If Avila extends him, the new ownership group regime that may come in, if Chris Ilitch does indeed sell the ball club, which I think everybody views as a possibility, a strong possibility at some point after this season at least, well, then there has to be the case made that Avila, you're right, his job is on the line as well. It might be a duo firing of Ausmus and Avila. And what if Avila were to extend Ausmus then during the middle of the season? That would look horrible. That'd be, if not his worst move, maybe his second worst move as club general manager, because you could argue that Cameron Maben, that trade was a travesty and the worst move that Avila has made to date. Even though those signings of Pelfrey, of him, getting Mark Lowe, and those contracts were albatrosses of contracts, did not work out whatsoever for the Tigers. You could say the two worst moves that Avila has made, maybe was picking up Ausmus's option for a fourth year for this season, but also that trade of Maben. And then if he were to extend Ausmus mid-season at some point, or after the season, after a season in which they might not make the playoffs, and let's say they don't make the playoffs, and he does extend Ausmus for what would be a fifth year as Tigers skipper, that you could argue is the worst move he's ever made as Tigers general manager. And that could be the reason why Avila is then fired as well. So Avila better watch out for his own job. You are right with saying that, Doc.
No doubt about it. I think that playing well against the White Sox and getting a series sweep doesn't even, make a lot of people go woo-woo, because you got a series against Boston right around the corner. So you got to perform well at home in a weekend series versus the Red Sox. It doesn't get easier. You're expected to go out there and dominate against the crumb bum teams, but you can't lose all those games to the Indians. You can't lose to the good teams and just beat up on the bad teams, because in essence, you still will shake out where everybody thinks around 85 wins and 77 losses. You got to go out there and actually help the team win. And that's what I'm looking for with Brad Ausmus, is to go do some things, make a move, and, put in Alex Wilson in the right spot and have it work out. Now, it's going to take a little bit of luck for his moves to work out, but look at one of the early moves now. Justin Verlander's in the 7th inning pitching with over 100 pitches. With a 4-run lead.
Fire Ausmus right now. Got it. Hey, Tigers have to do it right now. Get rid of Ausmus. I'm joking. Because you know what? Everybody will overreact to this first game, even as we already have throughout this first episode where the Tigers are playing in the regular season in 2017. And like that right there, we could nitpick him all day. I don't think it's worth it. Verlander has earned his right to be out there for as long as he wants to be out there. Already a 10 strikeout game, by the way, out of Verlander.
And as we're talking, they've just now made the move. Verlander's out of the game.
So now, rightfully so, I think making the move. But really to slam Ausmus for that. Now, the thing is, you could slam him. Let's say Verlander was to stay out there longer and was to get hurt then you rightfully slam Ausmus.
103 pitches for his first performance of the year. I'm pretty okay with that. So
yeah, keep it right there. Not much more over that. If he were to go like to 110, if he was to go to 110 pitches or something like that in his first start of the season on opening day for the Tigers, then you could slam Ausmus, rightfully so, in my opinion. But at 103, yeah, I'm fine with that too, Doc, out of Verlander in his first start of the season.
And the first guy that Brad Ausmus goes to for the bullpen in 2017, Justin Wilson.
The Wilsons have to be a lot more productive, and I think they will be used heavily out of the Tigers' pen in 2017.
Let's take our first time out. Quick break here. We'll regroup. I have a question for you because I did a little bit of investigating here in terms of the salaries. Now, the Tigers were, when people look at it, they have the second highest payroll in Major League Baseball. But something in terms of how the money is allocated kind of caught my attention. I'm interested to get your take on it next after the break.
Sounds good, and we'll be right back on episode 85 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company.
Doc here for the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Thank you for your continued support and allowing us to keep the studio lights on, the microphones hot here at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. If you like what you're listening to, you like the variety of podcasts that you hear, definitely check out our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. That's the easiest way to support us. You get all the news from the network. You can check out the work from Vito, myself, all the guys that are putting out great content almost each and every day. And hey, if you're prone to shop online, click through that Amazon banner, go about your business, shop, and then when you're on that Amazon page, just bookmark it. Anytime at all that you make an online purchase, it kicks us back a little something and helps us keep this project going. We've been going strong since 2013, and that's been largely due to the support of our supporters, and we greatly appreciate it. DetroitSportsPodcast.com.
And back here on Tigers Talk for opening day of the regular season for the Tigers on the road in Chicago, the south side of Chicago, against the AL Central rival Chicago White Sox, who look very depleted as a whole and don't look like they're going to win many games. They're going to finish well under 500, in my opinion, as I think many, many people believe too. And before the commercial break, Doc did say something about talking about contracts, right? And what did you have for us, Doc, regarding that?
Okay, Vito, obviously the Detroit Tigers have a top-heavy payroll, whereas they have some athletes making $28 million a year. They have athletes that are obviously offensive threats, great pitchers, things like that. But then when you look at it, the bottom 6 paid players, 6 of the 12 pitchers that are on the roster are some of the lowest paid pitchers in terms of their overall salary. And you look at, some of them are not even making $1 million. Bruce Rondon, $850,000. Kyle Ryan, $546,000. Alex Wilson, a little bit over $1 million. He's not in that group. Justin Wilson is a high paid pitcher, but Michael Fulmer's making less than $1 million. Matt Boyd making less than $1 million. Daniel Norris making less than $1 million. So my observation is half of your pitchers are among the lowest paid athletes on the squad. And I look at it and I go, ooh, now you're going to be calling upon some guys to really overperform in terms of their contract. But when I tell that to you, what's your reaction in that they're going to be counting on some of these pitchers that are only making around the league minimum at $550,000 on average? Shane Green, $550,600. And you can go to DetroitSportsPodcast.com where I break down the 25-man roster and their salaries. The lowest paid players, 6 of the lowest paid Detroit Tigers are pitchers.
Well, they're making that small of money because they're on rookie contracts too, remember.
Yep.
And if they're making peanuts like that, that's not a problem for the Tigers. That's a good problem to have, really, in so many words, because as many players as you can get at or close to the league minimum, below $1 million too, that's, in fact, a good thing, a very good thing for a club to deal with. And the thing is, those guys that are youngsters probably will outperform those salaries, too, which means they're going to be in for some paydays soon. Maybe huge paydays as well, which could hurt the Tigers' payroll situation, remember, too, Doc.
Okay. No, I said the same thing. I'm like, you know what? If they can perform, then you're getting great value for those guys, and then El Avila looks smart. But then you go, well, if this is going to be a playoff team and you expect great success, these are guys that you're really hoping overperform in terms of their contract. But half of your pitchers are very low paid at this point in time.
And relievers will be largely too, especially the guys that are not at the back end of the bullpen, but will pitch in those mop-up situations or in long relief situations outside of Anibal Sanchez, who's making an albatross of a contract once again, as I've talked about numerous times on Tigers Talk. And it seems like it's been a long time that I've said that about him, too. Like, throughout the years now, we can say that about how Sanchez's contract has become an albatross of a contract, especially for a guy that's being used as a long reliever out of the Tigers' bullpen. But largely, the guys that you will have taking up the spots in the pen and towards the beginning of the bullpen are guys that are going to be on the younger side and guys that, were failed starting pitchers that had to convert to relievers, had to become relief pitchers because they couldn't cut the mustard seed as starting arms every fifth day. And that's why they're making peanuts. That's why they're making diddly squat, because they weren't effective starting pitchers and had to resort to being relievers to make it on a big league ball club. As many of the guys you probably can say that about as you go from big league club to big league club. So if you were to look at a bunch of teams' payrolls, you would notice, Doc, I think big time, that a lot of the guys that make the least amount of money on each team, those guys largely are relief pitchers.
Understood, Vito, but we'll wait and see how the season's going to progress and how these pitchers do perform. But applause to Justin Wilson. He got in there and got some outs, going to the 8th inning now in the first game, and so far so good. We got a huge reaction on Twitter, on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, in regards to the uneasiness of the bullpen. And just that's the story. I believe that will be the story throughout the course of the 2017 year, is how do the Tigers handle when they get leads. They were a team that got quite a few leads in 2016, but there were several situations in which they gave up the leads. They did come back and win a few, but at the same time, they did blow several leads. So the story will be, I really believe, how does the bullpen perform, and do they finally shake the perception of just being the craptastic squad that they are? Even look at national prognosticators, Deadspin, SI, ESPN. They've all written pieces regarding the ineptness of the bullpen. It's their job to go out there and prove everybody wrong.
Well, you know what? Tony Paul just wrote a great article about the Tigers leading into the season for the Detroit News about 5 ways in which the Tigers can flourish in 2017 and 5 ways in which they can fizzle. And the first way in which they can fizzle, according to Tony Paul, so the biggest way in which they can fizzle is based on what? It's based on the bullpen. The stinkiness, the ineptness of the pen, and what that may be. If it's really, really bad, that bullpen can cost the Tigers, as it has in how many consecutive seasons, Doc, it has seemed like. And it could once again cost the Tigers dearly in 2017. And according to Tony Paul, once again, a great baseball scribe of the Detroit News, he says the first way, the biggest way in which the Tigers can fizzle, in which their hopes for making the playoffs can fizzle, is via the bullpen, which I think both you and I definitely agree upon too, Doc.
No doubt about it, Vito, and you're going to be calling upon Anibal Sanchez, Shane Green, Alex Wilson, Bruce Rondon, and K-Rod, Francisco Rodriguez will be the anchors of that bullpen, and you just hope, and again, to tie back to what we talked about earlier, how does Brad Ausmus utilize them? What spots does he put them in? Does he realize the matchups? Because there were a couple, many people will point to a lot of them. There were a couple of matchups in terms of utilization of the bullpen that didn't favor the Tigers that Brad Ausmus went with, and it just seemed like last year, maybe this year, the odds will turn around, because it just seemed like every move that Brad Ausmus made in 2016 just didn't turn out right.
It all backfired on him.
It all backfired. So maybe this year he'll stumble into some moves where maybe statistically speaking they're not the right ones, but the pendulum will swing to the other side where some things that he does will just turn around and those guys will improve. You're counting on a lot without many upgrades, but I was happy that Hardy's not going to be pitching so far. Kyle Ryan made the squad, but he's going to go on maternity leave for the first week or so. He just had a child. So we'll see how the bullpen is going to be utilized, because that matchup versus the Red Sox, you don't want to use the bullpen that
Not
quickly.
Kyle Ryan, but he'll be gone, right? You said. I mean, but guys like that, those guys are stinky. Those are guys that aren't effective, that you don't want as part of your bullpen the whole entire season. A guy that should be up soon, who you want, I think, as a member of your big league bullpen, eventually at least, is Joe Jimenez. Where the heck is he? And or when will he be up with the big league ball club? Because I think it could be relatively soon, depending on the success of other
They're marinating
big
on
league
him. No,
bullpen
they
arms.
want him to show success. Remember, for the most part, he did perform well at the World Baseball Classic, but he's only an expert at one pitch. He can get guys out with the fastball, but you can't exclusively feature that. You got to work on and perfect another pitch. You don't want to go out there and have a guy go out there and give up 5-6 runs because everybody knows what he's pitching. These are major league hitters. These are not minor league hitters. These are not amateurs. They don't want to embarrass him. They want him to work on these pitches in AAA this year. I don't think, if everything's going well, if you see Jimenez, I think then you'll see the Tigers being 5 to 10 games under 500. And you'll see a lot of blown saves, and the bullpen just basically dumpster fire.
Maybe they pull the plug on Kyle Ryan quickly, though. If Ryan really struggles, a guy like that, who they're not counting upon for much success in 2017, if he really struggles, how about they go to Joe Jimenez as his replacement? Now, okay, he might not have enough productive big league quality pitches yet in his arsenal, Joe Jimenez, that is. Thing is, last year they were talking about calling him up, and they never did, probably because of that, but you and I know I did. I don't know about you, actually. I'm not going to put you under the bus here. But Tony Paul, trusted, respected baseball scribes, talked about Joe Jimenez being called up last year down the stretch. And they said he should have been. Tony Paul, Drew Sharp called upon Joe Jimenez as well at one point to be called up to the big league club. He never was last year. Where the heck was he? Why wasn't he featured down the stretch? Really this year now. Let's just talk about this year. Are you really going to trust Kyle Ryan over Joe Jimenez? Haven't we seen enough out of Kyle Ryan, Doc, to this point? And we know he's lackluster, can't be effective out of the pen enough to sustain a major league job or a job in a major league pen? Haven't we seen that? Hasn't Kyle Ryan proven that in his major league career up to this point enough to say, hey, let's turn to a youngster who's got some quality stuff that might be something of big time worth? Right, Doc? Can't that be a reason why you say, hey, maybe we pull the plug quickly on a guy such as Kyle Ryan and we go to Joe Jimenez? And maybe not, it's not going to happen in April, but how about in May? How about mid-May? By then? How about you call up Joe Jimenez by then? We'll see how the Tigers do end up using him, because I know one thing, he'll be up this season, and I really do think it'll be sooner than later. Not in the first month, but why couldn't he be up in June? I could see him up in June, up in July. And I really think the Tigers might have their hand forced enough to where they have to deploy Joe Jimenez in the bigs sooner than later, too.
I think you're being very, very impatient, Vito. And that's not like you.
Just because we know about the pen from the past. We've already seen this train wreck of a bullpen, right? We've been there, done that.
But then I don't think that going to a young guy is the answer. And guess what, Vito? Guess who gets the 8th inning? Bruce Rondon, baby.
Your boy, Bruce Rondon. Will he finally get his act together? Everything started coming together for Bruce Rondon more and more down the stretch in 2016. How about a full season of everything coming together? Will it happen for Mr. Rondon, your boy, in 2017? I really hope so.
It's going to be great. I think he's going to take my advice. He's going to... Dude, he came in a little puffy still, dude.
Dude, 200 pounds or something, I think I read in Tony Paul's article. My God, has he not learned about getting in shape and the importance of that? Come on, man. And that's where he's got to get his act together still.
Speaking of getting your act together, there is some news regarding opening day on Friday at Comerica Park. Are you hearing that it's not sold out? And when I read that, Tony Paul has been hammering the point home regarding it's not sold out. There's still a plethora of tickets. I go, you know what? I'm not surprised at all. The ticket price is way too much. It's under the guise of dynamic pricing where it's a popular game. So the Tigers can charge one day, Friday, $85 for a ticket. And then the next day on Saturday, when the weather's going to be nicer, the same ticket's $12. $85 on Friday, $12 on Saturday. Get out of here with that. And then everyone's I'm really surprised that people are surprised by this notion. When I look at it, I go, the party's outside. Vito's going to be bar hopping all over the place.
If I could, it would be before the game. That's what everybody does. All these fair weather Tigers fans, there's people that are going down there for opening day before the game actually begins. They're going to be down there well before then, early in the morning. And guess what? Those people that are down there well before then, do they even know 3, 4, or 5 Tigers? Can they even name 3 Tigers? Not all of them can.
Right. The whole point is the Tigers are the reason to go down there.
They're just an excuse to go down there to get drunk. Exactly. That's really what it is on opening day. It's not about the hardcore Tigers fans going and really enjoying the game. It's about enjoying the festivities beforehand, all the drinking beforehand, where you get sloshed. For a lot of fans, they get sloshed, can't even walk, are staggering, and when they get into Comerica, well, they're collapsing. They're done for by that point, and they're not even watching the game then. So the game is secondary on opening day. It really is. And that's why the game is not sold out, which Tony Paul, I think, does realize that in the back of his head, and other people that maybe are saying stuff and criticizing maybe the Tigers faithful for it. But it's about the Tigers and how much they're charging, as you said, Doc. And then when it's $85 for a lackluster seat in the ballpark, do you blame fans for not being willing to pay $85 for a lackluster seat in Comerica? I don't, Doc. I really don't, because hard economic times that we've all fallen upon, at least a little bit, including us people that are barely out of college like myself, or if you're in college or paying off loans, you're still paying off loan debt. I am too. A lot of people are. You can't afford those $85 tickets for, once again, lackluster seats at Comerica Park.
I don't find it to be a big deal at all. You can stay at home. And plus, the other factor is people are tired of the crappy weather. Who wants to go downtown when it's 40 degrees outside, windy? You're going to have to be wearing a hat. Dude, I read the report today. There's snow coming at some point this week. Are you serious? It's April. It's baseball weather, and we're getting snow. So the weather, the high price, makes it for me like something where we're actually deciding. I'm off on Friday. I'm not going to go down probably to opening day if the weather's going to be bad. I'll just enjoy the day, have some cervezas at home.
And you know what? You save a lot of money that way. And you can have as much fun, if not more fun, too. And avoid all that bad weather. If it's going to be crummy weather, which it might be, as you said, based on the forecast that we've seen so far leading into Friday, well, then you know what? You stay at home, you stay warm, you stay out of that bad inclement weather and whatnot, and you can enjoy yourself at a very dirt cheap cost. I mean, that's the advantage of that, too. And if you're not a real Tigers fan that really doesn't care about the game and the outcome of the game or even going to the game, then you kind of have to, I guess, view the pros and cons of going down there and spending all that money, even spending all that money before the game on beers, on drinks. Think about how all that adds up after a while, too. So it's expensive either way. Even if you don't go to the game, it's expensive just to go down there, on opening day, Doc.
100%, Vito. I agree with you. I think that many more people are realizing that it is more fun to do it your own way, not being around the hustle and bustle of the crowd, not being around drunk people. And most people now realize that if you can have the opportunity to watch it at home, do what you want to do, and have a good time, that it's much more worth it. It's much more worth it to stay at home than it is probably to go down there, especially if the weather's bad.
And I can't go on a diatribe and say that unless you're a hardcore fan, you shouldn't be going to the game on opening day, because opening day is a celebration for all people of all walks of life. They don't even care about the Tigers, don't even know anything about baseball or the Tigers. But you almost view it as this, too. A hardcore Tigers fan would rather stay at home and watch the game from their warm confines than go down there and deal with the drunk people. I mean, there is that as well, that aspect of things to really take into account, is that a really hardcore Tigers fan, does he or she want to deal with all the stupidity of a bunch of people downtown before the game begins?
What are you doing Friday? What's your plan?
Well, Friday, as you're busy on your phone as usual, I know you're always busy, and, I'm not doing much. I'm working on Friday. You're taking the day off. You said you will be at home then to watch the game?
It depends on the weather, but we might go downtown, or we might just stay at home or go to a local watering hole, have a couple of cocktails, and get home before the game ends.
And save some money and stay warm. So 2 good reasons, really, to watch the game from your house, I think, Doc. I give you credit. If you stay home, I give you credit for that, because a lot of people feel the need, I think, to even go downtown, no matter what the weather may be. And the weather may be very crappy, as we've already established. And for me in the past, I've only gone to one Tigers opening day, by the way, which may be surprising to you and to the masses, but only one home opening day that I've been to for the Tigers in my lifetime.
That's it?
Yeah, up to this point.
Was it with Nick?
With my dad and my brother. Some more of that hardcore baseball atmosphere being with my dad and my brother. Now, if I was with Nick, it would be party, party, party until we all get wasted almost. It would be that kind of setting or atmosphere. It would be a lot of fun, but we wouldn't enjoy the Tigers game as thoroughly as I would and have in the past at one time with my dad and brother. Dominic Chirco, shout out to him, on opening day, as we went to an opening day for the Tigers, I believe when I was in high school. So it's been a while too, Doc, and it's about darn time that I go to another Tigers opening day, I think. So maybe the plans will present themselves. Maybe there will be that opportunity to go in the near future here.
All right, a couple quick hitters before we get out of here. Very fine podcast. I think we're on the verge of a Tigers victory here. We're watching here on the Tigers Talk, episode 85. Thank you for downloading, everybody. We greatly appreciate it. couple quick thoughts that I need to know from you real fast before we end this podcast. Before the season, some news kind of broke that maybe Melvin Upton Jr. might be joining the Tigers. I think he was released from Toronto. He was on his way back when the season started to his home in Tampa Bay. But many people were discussing Melvin Upton Jr. joining the Tigers. Yay or nay?
Nay, and big time. Now, really quick, he was cut by the Jays, hit a .194, and recorded a .216 on-base percentage in spring training. That's not cutting the mustard seed whatsoever. And then you look at his career OPS plus. By the way, a league average OPS plus is 100. His career OPS plus, Doc, is below that. It's 97 only. So I say forget about even entertaining the idea of picking up Justin Upton's brother, Melvin Upton Jr., who, remember, if they were to get him, you got the brothers back together. Also, you got Kate Upton. You have Kate Upton, JV's soon-to-be wife, right? Plus J. Up and the artist formerly known as BJ Upton, which is Melvin Upton Jr., who right now, he's a guy you don't want to go after. They're going young down that route more to see what JaCoby Jones, a guy like that, Mikey Machuk, they want to see what those guys are made of, and it's more important to see what they're made of than picking up Melvin Upton Jr. at this point, Doc.
Okay, and finally, many people are pointing to one player as being the up-and-coming bright star for the Detroit Tigers, and his name is Michael Fulmer. But there are other guys out there that are going to be productive throughout Major League Baseball. That's why a lot of fans are going to watch to see what Boston does, what teams out east in the American League Central does. Do the Cubs and Indians have a chance to repeat the same World Series that we had in 2016? But I think a player that many people are comparing Fulmer to in terms of his upstart, not the same position, but starting backstop Gary Sanchez of the Yankees, many people are kind of looking to and saying, wow, what a campaign. He kind of was a star on the rise. What are your projections for Michael Fulmer, and do you think he outperforms Gary Sanchez in 2017?
I'm going to sadly say no. Sanchez last year, remember, in just 53 games, hit .299, recorded a .657 slugging percentage, and 20 home runs and 42 RBIs. Stellar job done by him in that limited amount of time. An extremely small sample size, but remember this too. With that, all of that being said, he left the yard, guys, once every 11 trips to the plate. So think about that in itself. Once every 11 trips to the plate. And when you add in his 12 doubles, he recorded an extra base hit in 14% of his plate appearances. In comparison, once again, an extremely small sample size for Gary Sanchez, but in comparison, Mike Trout had an extra base hit in 11.2% of his plate appearances last season, and has never had a rate higher than 11.9%. Once again, Gary Sanchez, with those doubles taken into account, had an extra base hit in 14% of his plate appearances in 2016. I see him outperforming Michael Fulmer in 2017, as Fulmer, I think, will have a little bit, at least, of sophomore regression. I think more starting pitchers go through that than big league hitters, too, and that's why I give the edge to Gary Sanchez in 2017 over Michael Fulmer.
How many wins does Michael Fulmer get? I think the over-under for Vegas, if you want to bet, is 11.5.
I would say 12, a healthy 12. How about you?
I think that's fair to go over. Maybe make some easy money, bet that Michael Fulmer gets 12 wins. Who is the MVP of the Tigers this year, do you believe?
You know what? I'm going to say, Jordan Zimmermann is probably the biggest key to the Tigers being successful. His health, his productivity is a reason why the Tigers will either be good or bad, I think, to a large degree. So the biggest key is Zimmermann and how productive he is in 2017. But the MVP of the ball club, I think, could be actually Nick Castellanos or JD Martinez. I'm going to say one of those two guys. But I see Verlander being ultra effective all throughout the season, being once again a Cy Young candidate in the American League. I don't see Cabby being an MVP type in the majors as a whole, but he'll be productive once again. I don't think as productive as JV will be for the Tigers rotation. So I would say among the hitters, and I would say for the ball club as a whole, I'm going to actually say it'll be JD Martinez and Nick Castellanos being almost the co-MVPs. Hard for me to pick one right now, but I would say one of those two guys will be the most valuable player for the Tigers in 2017. How about you?
I'm going with Nicholas Castellanos. I think he has a chance, if you want to make a bold prediction, to hit 35 home runs and 120 RBIs this year, especially with that gnarly scarf around his neck. You see that little get-up that he's wearing?
I didn't. No.
When you see the highlights of his home run check, he's like wearing this little kind of get-up that's a little unique.
Well, it's cold in Chi-Town. Remember, he's got to stay warm at the plate, as he's shown, at least in the first game, was warm at the plate. And I think he'll hit a lot of home runs, and he'll be very productive all throughout 2017, Doc.
look at you in mid-season form on the first episode of this Tigers season. Good job. Episode 85 overall of the podcast. A very good episode. I kind of feel like we need more time, but our time is up at this point for this podcast.
Our time is up, I guess, and I will let you slide on that front. I guess I'll just have to bow down to the Podfather, as I normally do, willingly too.
So, Vito, how many games do you think they win versus the Boston Red Sox this weekend?
I'm going to say they split. So take 2 out of 4. How about you?
That's pretty fair, Vito. I think they take maybe Michael Fulmer's game, maybe the middle game as well. But it's going to be a tough series. Man, you see Porcello's numbers. His first game, he had a solid performance in the Red Sox opening day win for them. But I think the way I'm going to look at it, the Tigers are going to win 2 out of 3 versus the White Sox, and they're going to split versus the Red Sox. So that gives them 4 wins and 3 losses to start the year.
I say they sweep the White Sox and take 2 out of 4 at home over the weekend against the Red Sox.
So 5-2. I got them going 4-3. You got them going 5-2.
Indeed. And you know what? The Red Sox right now, remember, David Price is out and Drew Pomeranz. So they're lacking some starting pitching depth to start up the season. That's why the Tigers, I think, can take advantage of that the Red Sox right now aren't fully equipped with their rotation. And remember, Clay Buchholz was dealt to the Philadelphia Phillies in the offseason. So, lacking in that starting pitching department, at least a little bit the Bo Sox are, to start off the 2017 regular season. And, Doc, with that, great talking to you as usual, and great talking to you when we actually have a regular season game that we could talk about on episode 85 of Tigers Talk. Guys, it's been a pleasure, and thanks to all of you as well for listening. Talk to you again next week for episode 86 of Tigers Talk. Goodbye.